Welcome to the Nerd Pastors Podcast, a place where faith and fandom collide. I'm your host, Justin Nava, and you may know me from some things as sitting on my couch and watching Moon Knight, and lying in bed and watching Moon Knight, and going upstairs and watching Moon Knight, because that's what we're talking about. I wasn't in Moon Knight, but I did casually observe and watch it. And with me, I've got a special guest host, Garrett. Is it Gerhart?
That's right.
Is that right? Garrett, tell people who you are, because you've never been on the show.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. I live in Southern California. I'm a communications director. I did youth ministry for almost 15 years, and then slowly transitioned out because, I started getting gray hairs and decided it was time. And so now I work with church communications, helping lead our staff, our creative staff, graphic designer, video, stuff like that. And that's about it.
I love it. And by the way, you're committing, I should have told you this before we hit record, you are committing a cardinal sin on Zoom by going on video with a blue background. I have a feeling some of the other nerd pastors who are a little bit more Photoshop centric will have some fun with that. Maybe challenge.
I thought about replacing it with something built into Zoom, but it was just too perfect. Like
it was too perfect. Yeah, it looked like you actually know what you're doing, and people would just be messaging you, "How did you do this? And how can I do it for my church?" Because I get those messages all the time. I just flew in like 2 hours ago from that church conference, so I was around other church communicators, and I went to the midnight showing of Doctor Strange last night. And I woke up early to go meet a colleague at the Salvation Army Seminary in Atlanta. And I am exhausted. I slept for like 3 hours, didn't get much sleep on the plane. So I'm going to try to hang in here. Ricky Pope is going to join us in a few minutes. But I wanted to get started and talk about Moon Knight. Garrett, oh, wait, we got someone here. Waiting. Hey! It's not Stephen Earp. It's Ricky Pope, who forgot to change his name tag.
I did. I will change that.
No worries. At least it doesn't say like Daddy's Girl or something like that. That would be incredibly awkward.
Ricky, you're just a partner of mine. You don't know.
You're just no, I don't mind. You're just in time because we were just doing introductions. Ricky, welcome to the show again.
Yes, thank you very much.
Have you met Garrett? Have y'all talked any at all?
I don't think
so. I don't think I've met Garrett.
Okay, hopefully you guys like each other. Man, I'm a terrible host. Like, I don't even know. These guys are going to be like on opposite sides of the spectrum. It's just going to be arguing all day. But maybe that makes for good
That's
show.
Part of it, right?
Yeah,
I disagree.
You're not a Christian because you hated Moon Knight. Or actually, you're not a Christian because you love Moon Knight. Yeah. But what gets me is when people are like, you know what? First thing is I doubt his salvation. I'm like, oh, really? Come on, guy. Like, is that the first thing? But anyways, so I slept for about 3 hours. I've been traveling, and worst part, I've been traveling out of the Atlanta airport, which was a nightmare. I've only heard bad things, and now I can say I've experienced bad things. But thankfully, made my flight just on time and got home and came home. But I wanted to do this because Moon Knight had a finale, Ozark had a finale, Doctor Strange I watched last night, but we won't talk about it on this episode.
Please don't.
I'm not going to talk about it. Not going to spoil anything.
I haven't seen it yet, so
yeah. I was very fortunate to be able to go see it last night, and definitely go see it. And the only thing I will suggest is don't take your kids to go see it with you the first time. That's it. That's the only thing I'm going to say.
I've heard that from more than one person.
Yeah. But we're talking about Moon Knight. So Garrett, before Ricky interrupted us, I'm just kidding. Garrett, do you have any experience with Moon Knight? Any previous knowledge before the show?
No, pretty much none. I'm a big MCU fan. Watched all the movies multiple times. Well, I didn't watch Eternals more than that one time. But all the shows, pretty limited knowledge on the comic book stuff, which is ironic because one of my favorite things to do is I love sci-fi and I love to read the source material, like read the book before you go watch it. Not to complain, which sometimes, but just to compare and contrast, right? Like when Dune came out, always wanted to read Dune. I'm like, now is the time to read the book so I can go watch the movie. But when it comes to Marvel stuff, I just like to be surprised. I used to work with college and youth ministry students, and I'm like, just explain it to me before I go. We'd talk for hours about it. But now I go and I'm like, I've heard something about Moon Knight. I could read the comics, but I'm just ready to be surprised and entertained.
Nice. I always thought Moon Knight was a Spider-Man character. I know him best from an expansion to a Marvel game that I play, and it's a Spider-Man expansion, but Moon Knight comes as a playable character. So I always thought and it's out of the comic event Paint the Town Red, which I think it was a comic event. And I always thought Moon Knight was just like in the game, he has an ability called Wall Crawler. Like I thought he was just like a Spider-Man villain. I had no idea of the Egyptian god background. I knew he was like a ground level city character, and I had heard he was similar to Batman, but really didn't know anything about the whole what would you call it, Egyptian eschatology. Is that using that word correctly, behind the Moon Knight character? And so this was all new to me. This was probably the least I've known about a character, except for well, not even the Eternals, because I did read Neil Gaiman's trade of the Eternals, which was good. And of course, anything was better than a burning diaper pail that's full is better than the Eternals movie. What about you, Ricky? Did you have any past experience with Moon Knight?
I actually read some of the very first run of Moon Knight, the 1985 version, and then I kind of kept up with the character a little bit from time to time when he would appear in other comics that I was reading, but I never really read any of the other Moon Knight comics when they started doing the saying he had DID rather than having just three different, rather than just being the master of disguise who could make himself look like somebody else, but so I'm a little new to this version, but as always with every Marvel, with every MCU thing, the version that we get here is not going to be the same as what we have in the comic books.
Yeah, and I was telling who that's I think I was telling my wife about that. I was like, yeah, I was talking to her yesterday. I was like, yeah, I'm going to see Doctor Strange, and she said, are you looking forward to it? And I said, at this point, I'm that old man that just says it's not my Marvel, and I just hope it's a good story. And that could actually, we'll talk about this more during the Doctor Strange thing, but that could actually help me if it wasn't like the comment for a certain character in the Doctor Strange movie. But you're right. It is like, just forget everything you knew. There's some fun Easter eggs, but where this is pretty much an original story, and it really is. I couldn't put my finger on it. And maybe we'll just jump into the discussion about the shows. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I compared it to season 1 of Daredevil on Netflix. Season 1 of Daredevil, he never donned the Daredevil costume until the last episode. But you like, and in Moon Knight, you got a few seconds of the costume in the first episode, and you got none of the costume in the second episode, and another few seconds in the third episode. And it didn't feel as well paced as Daredevil. And maybe it's because I didn't know who the character was. Maybe it was because they were going back and forth with the DID, and then you got Mr. Suit Knight, and then the Moon Knight. But I don't know. I just felt like, it felt to me like when you play a video game, the tutorial level, you have all your weapons and spells, and then you have amnesia and you forget everything, and you got to start at level 1. And that's what it felt like in the show. And I don't know. It just doesn't translate to TV. What did y'all think? Was it what was your overall impression, Garrett?
It was really good. Is this the first MCU, which is weird to call it cinematic universe TV show, but is this the first MCU TV show other than like the Netflix ones that's an origin story, right? Like the other ones were like
would you call the Falcon movie? No, that's not really an origin. I mean, it's this first series as Captain America, but that's not really an origin.
I think they had to spend a lot of time maybe really helping you understand who this character is. Like I remember when Spider-Man jumped into Civil War, I was like, wow, they're not going to do an origin. And all my friends were like, well, that's because where Spider-Man came from. I'm like, okay, good point.
True.
And so Moon Knight, I mean, you really have no idea where the character comes from. So it reminds me in that sense, of really introducing the character and how they come about their powers and who they are, which in some shows, they don't need to do that. They just jump in, you know who this character is, you know how they got their powers, you know how they fit into the MCU. Where this show, they really had to build that in. And you're right, which means there's tons of episodes that are just a ton of dialogue, ton of flashbacks, ton of insight into the trauma in his past. That's why he is the way that he is. And so it's definitely a different pacing show. But I really enjoyed it.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. This is the first Disney Plus Marvel show where the lead character has never been in something that someone might have seen already.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought about that.
And Hawkeye comes in second only because Kate Bishop is kind of the main character, but not exactly the main character in the Hawkeye series. And she hadn't been seen before in any MCU shows or movies. So it's kind of like, that was kind of she's kind of the first one there. And then this one is like, okay, we're going to just drop you into the middle of something that you've never seen before. And I think that's actually an interesting thing that, this is a comment for the people who are thinking about going to see the Doctor Strange movie. The bigger the MCU gets and the more tightly wound it becomes, the harder it's going to be for an outsider to come in quickly to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and feel like they're comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. And that kind of makes sense why the rumor is they're heading towards Secret Wars already. We talked about that on a previous show, like already the end of phase 2, you're hitting Secret Wars. But yeah, by then it'll have been 16 years. And you've got a whole new generation that's ready to come in. And it's like, yeah, let's go ahead and do a soft reboot. Which kind of brings in what we were talking about before, which is like, well, can we at least for the first 2 or 3 phases, can we have like good Marvel storytelling and then bring in the alternates and the variants in like phase 2? Like, okay, now let's have Falcon be a Captain America. I don't know. I just feel like we didn't get, it's not my Marvel. It's like we didn't get enough time with Steve Rogers. And I feel selfish saying that, but I mean, that's really how I feel. Is like, I feel like we're already making all these changes and prepping for that next. I mean, for the characters that were just written 5 years ago in Marvel Comics, they're already hitting the big screen when there's so many other original stories to tell. This has nothing to do with Moon Knight. I'm just tired. So you're getting unfiltered Justin. That doesn't walk through my head. Like, should I not say this? But
sorry I took us down that road. But actually, this has been the thing that has been running through my head all day.
But you're right. I mean, this is the first time we're really doing an origin story. He's not being introduced through another, like Spider-Man came in, but he was introduced through another story. Same thing, we know America Chavez is in Doctor Strange 2. She didn't get her own arc. I mean, she's brought in as part of the storytelling of that movie. Even Wanda and / Scarlet Witch came in as a result of Age of Ultron, and really developed during Civil War. So you're right. This is kind of like, it's been a while since we've really had a true origin story. And unfortunately, we get another one coming up with Miss Marvel on Disney Plus. And then we have a little bit of Jane Foster Thor origin, but again, it's brought in through Thor's story, his Thor story. Thor 4 story brand. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Going back. Yeah. So I felt like the pacing was a little off. And I also, seriously, after episode 3, I can't even barely remember the first 3 episodes, but I remember thinking this is not a good show. It wasn't until we really dove into the DID stuff did it really start to get interesting? Like when the episode, I think it was episode 4, where it ended it with him at the mental hospital. That's when it got good. Before that, I really didn't care about what was happening. I really didn't. I think they could have done, again, not knowing anything, Harrow was an interesting villain. I think we could have gone into his motivations a little bit more. Like he just kind of felt like, I'm going to take my ball and go home because, you know, I didn't get my way with Khonshu or whatever. Like, what did y'all think about, let's talk about Harrow as a villain. What did y'all think of him? I thought Ethan Hawke did a good job. I just thought he wasn't fleshed out well.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Marvel typically does a pretty good job, for better or worse, if you enjoy this or not, is really kind of humanizing the villain, right? Like, you know, I think like a lot of the Netflix MC Marvel stuff with Daredevil, of really like, okay, so this villain is the way that they are because of the trauma or whatever it is. And so, you know, you're not supposed to necessarily have too much compassion for the villain, but you're supposed to relate, I think, a little bit to their core motivation. Like, man, what would I be like if I went through that thing? But, you know, Harrow, like they don't talk about it at all. He just, you know, I mean, a little bit, they talk about how he was, you know, maybe Khonshu's avatar before, but there's just not a lot of that. And so you don't really care what happens to him, you know? And so when, in the end, you know, when he's killed, you're like, oh, well, I mean, is he really dead? Because he'll go into the afterlife, the field of reeds. I don't know. You know, you just really didn't have that much connection to him to really care how he finishes his story arc or continues it.
I got to agree with that. I thought he was an okay character, but kind of a forgettable villain. You know, he was always the bad guy, but with all the MCU stuff, there's always a bigger bad guy that's really running the show, and that's what we have here. But I thought Ethan Hawke did a great job playing the part. It was just a little odd. You know, he had all these powers and it's not super clear on how or why he got them. You know, it's the whole show he's talking to Steven, saying all these things that you know, early on I was thinking, well, probably he's lying about all this. But in the end, we find out actually he never lied about anything. Everything he said was true as far as the show goes.
Well, as far as he knew, right? Because I mean, technically, Amit was really the what do you call it? The unreliable narrator. Like she said, I want to balance the scales. And then, but by the way, your scales aren't balanced. And I know you're supposed to die, but instead I'm going to use you. Like, you know, she was playing him like a puppet. I really wish they had done more with the glass feet, the glass shoes. There was really just a one throwaway line. I loved it. At the very beginning, you're like, oh, he's walking on glass. Like, why is he walking on glass for? And they never really do anything. And he's got that one line in the last episode. Spoiler warning, by the way, didn't really put that in there. But like, obviously, but he's like, I've paid, I can pay more penance or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's why he has the glass shoes. But they never really like talk more about that, or like again, that's like something that could have been really motivating. Like, does he feel bad for the stuff he did for Khonshu? Is there something that he did before Khonshu? Like, like what is, you know, like we got a not Stephen Grant. What's the other Moon Knight's name? Mark Spector. Like we got his origin. Like he was on his deathbed. He had no choice but to serve Khonshu. But Harrow is just like, oh, I served him and now I don't. I don't know. It's just kind of whatever. I did like Moon Knight's sidekick. What was her name? Sparrow something? Scarlet Sparrow?
Scarab?
Scarab. There you go. Scarlet Scarab, I think is what it was. Yeah, I liked her. I know a lot of folks are like, oh, another woman superhero. I didn't see it that way. I saw it like it was a good sidekick to Moon Knight. I really thought it reminded me of Batman and Robin and some of that stuff. So I liked her reveal. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that was super cool. You didn't get much.
All right, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it.
No, I really thought her look was great. And,
and her story
about her around as a continuing hero, I think it'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, there was an all-female Avengers. Was it called the A Team or the A something? She could probably be a part of that. But yeah, I like that, and I like the whole. They could have probably fleshed it out more, but they only had 6 episodes. You know, Mark was there when her father died. That was a cool twist. Yep. Yeah, I thought that she had a good arc. I thought she did good. I had no problems with her. I know I just see stuff on Twitter and like, oh, like when I got spoiled on that reveal of her costume, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did they just kill Moon Knight? And now she's Moon Knight. Like I was totally ready for that. But yeah, I thought they had a good like little sidekick intro to her. And I also really liked in the final episode the giant lowercase g God fight. That
super
was cool. I love like that.
Godzilla fights in the MCU, like giant buildings, or well, I don't know if buildings are falling over, but
did you get the impression like the gods fight mirrored Harrow, the Avatar fight, Harrow and Moon Knight?
Absolutely.
I feel like they tried it. It didn't line up all the way.
There's one shot. It's kind of it's a low shot, and you see Harrow and Moon Knight fighting, and then in the background above the buildings, you see the gods fighting. Yeah, and it's a great shot.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. My only question is like, Amit sucked up the souls and grew to be a giant, but Khonshu just showed up giant.
Yeah, I was so confused. The last episode, there was a lot of confusing things, you know, like Ricky was saying, like, how did Harrow get his powers? I was like, oh, it's just coming from his cane. But then he got tossed around a few times, and you know, Ethan Hawke's not the youngest guy, and I'm like, wait, does he also have like physical abilities? Like, I'm a little bit confused.
Did they ever talk about where he got the cane from?
Not that I recall.
It's not like the Mummy where like he found it dumpster diving in a pyramid and then like, oh, well, maybe there's something else here, and also found out about the scarab. He just always had it. And then it turned into a hatchet, which was cool. He never used it like a hatchet, did he? I mean, he just kind of was decorative embellishment. But yeah, that last fight, I love the scene. Of course, everyone's seen the social media videos, right? Like the moon goes through its phases as the season goes on. So for episode 1, it's the waxing moon, and then it's quarter wax, and then it's half, and then so the last scene where Moon Knight's running down the pyramid and Harrow's running up and the moon's behind him, but like the pyramid's at an angle, but the camera's at the angle with the pyramid too, so it looks like they're running at. I liked that. The cinematography and the CGI was way better in the last episode than the rest of the show. Like, yes. I don't know how whoever was the producer. It reminds me of a Navy buddy that would talk about, you know, when you're on your ship for months, you have to plan your meals out in advance. And his captain would make them eat just soup and oatmeal for like 2 months. And then the last month they ate like kings. And so he's like, I felt like the production was like that. Like the first 5 episodes were bare minimum, good for TV, and then the last episode was like, oh, we got all this money left over, let's use it all now, because that last god fight, the last CGI, thought that was all great. And Oscar Isaac, fantastic. I knew he did a good job, but when he was actually like flipping, no camera cuts, I mean, just right on the spot flipping characters, wonderful, loved it.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Great.
I mean, that's got to be so hard to all of a sudden talk in a different accent and a different character and personality instantly or simultaneously as well, like having conversations with yourself. That's got to be really hard.
And even visually, like you could look at his face and you knew which character he was instantly. He did a magnificent job.
Yeah, I think he made the show. In fact, I remember after the first episode, I didn't really care. I think we had a show after that, and I said, you know, I really didn't care for it too much, but Oscar Isaac made the show for me the first few episodes. If it wasn't him, I don't know if I would have kept watching, or I probably would have just binged it all at the end.
I don't think it would have been as good.
Yeah, definitely would not have been as good. Is this now? I thought this was a series finale. Is Moon Knight coming back? Because I also heard Oscar Isaac didn't like being chained to being Poe Dameron and Star Wars. And so they were saying this was billed as a series, limited series, because he didn't want to sign a long contract. Have y'all heard anything about him coming back and playing the guys?
I haven't, I mean, when I think about all the Disney Plus Marvel shows, I can see how they either continue or they continue in another movie, or I can see how they finish and how that makes sense for that character. But thinking of Moon Knight, like, it can't just end like this. I mean, it was a great story, but you know, Kevin Feige always makes it fit into some grander, you know, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. So yeah, I don't know if it's a season 2 or he comes in a future movie. I'm not quite sure what movie that he would fit in, but there's got to be.
I was thinking he could definitely be a defender.
Right.
Like he could definitely join the Defenders. I think he'd match up with that. In fact, he could even, if they didn't want to do Iron Fist, they could just replace Iron Fist with Moon Knight and they wouldn't miss much. It's just instead of Kung Fu, it would be Egyptian Fu. But, you know, I think he would be great. My only question is, first of all, I mean, Jake now, that's his name, right? Jake, the third.
Jake Lockley.
Yeah, the third identity, which, when I saw the limousine, I was like, oh, yeah, that's what it was. Because that was his alter ego, he was a taxi driver. And that's how he would get to places he wasn't supposed to be. But I mean, like Mark and Steven, they black out and there's a bunch of murdered people. Like, does Jake not have the ability to like walk 10 yards out of the room before like whiting out back into Steven or Mark? Because I mean, eventually they're going to figure it out. Like, they're going to wake up in a limo and there's a dead body in the back. I mean, they're going to figure out there's a third person.
Well, they already
can
know.
They do anything with that? You think
I
already
think
know?
They already know,
because they certainly played stupid in the 5th episode. They're like, "What's wrong with their hearts? They're both not full, or they're both not like." I'm like, "Come on, guys, you don't remember?" Like, even after the first multi-murder, Mark was like, "Was that you, Steven?" And Steven like, "That wasn't me." And but they never addressed it. Like, I feel like they were intentionally being plot stupid with that because they didn't have an answer for us.
I think, this is my personal opinion. In universe, I think they know that there is a third.
Okay.
They don't know who the third is. They don't have a relationship with the third, but they know he exists because basically the third was in the sarcophagus that was shaking in the third or fourth episode. I don't remember which.
Fourth episode.
They know they blacked out and neither of them did that. And that's happened twice or 3 times now.
Twice, yeah.
Because it happens right near the end. It happens again with Harrow. When they're losing, all of a sudden they win. So they definitely know there's a third there. Whether they're willing to admit it or not.
They just talk to each other like a binary, like even talking about the origin story, which I was talking to someone that has a relation, is related to someone with DID. And she was talking about how like she was real upset because DID specifically develops in childhood. You don't develop it later in life. And so she was really upset. She was telling me the first few episodes, but then when they tell the childhood story, she was like, "Oh, okay, that's okay. Like, that's accurate. That's not disrespectful to the disorder." But yeah, I mean, but even then, telling the childhood story, it was completely binary. I mean, it's never like Steven blacked out while Mark blacked out, and then mom was laying dead on the floor. I mean, like that never happened. So when did Jake come about? Or was that something that happened with Khonshu? Like, do you walk on the serve? And then Jake woke up and was like, "See, I don't know." Like,
that's a good point.
I guess that's a mystery box. That's a box that was supposed to be introduced but not opened.
Yeah, I definitely think it's supposed to be the plot twist that we're not gonna reveal all our cards because someday we might do a second season.
I was gonna say, we're not going to reveal all our cards because we haven't taken them out of the deck yet.
Because we don't know
exactly know.
We're going to leave every show open-ended until we decide what we want to do with it.
Exactly.
That's Kevin Feige's specialty. Let's just open a lot of boxes and, hey, let's put the glove in the background of Thor and eventually we'll get to it. And if we don't, we'll just say it's a prop.
Well, and you were mentioning the heart thing, not balancing.
Yeah.
That math definitely doesn't add up because of the Jake Lockley thing.
Right.
But then how did his heart suddenly become full and balanced when only Steven's gone? That still doesn't add up, right?
And
that whole thing is
Jake
weird.
Doesn't have a heart. I don't know.
I don't know. Jake has no heart.
So, but Hero can only hold 2 hearts, so that's it.
Maybe, yeah. They can't snap a third one. It's too slippery on top. I don't know. Crocodile God lady, she was fun.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Tearaway or something. She was fun. She was funny.
You talking about the hippo god?
Yeah, the hippo god. What did I say?
You said alligator.
That's alligator, not the alligator.
That's the big bad.
That's Amit. No, the hippo god. Yeah, goddess. Tearaway or whatever. She was fun, talking through the dead bodies, and then letting Layla be her avatar. That was fun.
That was fun.
I thought Layla would come out and look like a little bit like a hippo. I didn't quite understand that they could have their own.
Yeah, where did the wings come from?
The scarab.
She just opens up and has wings now.
Maybe because she had that like scarab artifact. I think her dad called her little scarab or something like that. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Little bug.
So Harrow's probably dead. We didn't really, of course it was just a shot to blackout, right? We didn't actually see Harrow get shot, but he's probably dead. Also, interesting point, I noticed the limousine has red leather seats, so easy to clean, I guess, or it doesn't stain. But yeah, I thought it was overall. I think this show, and I think maybe with Disney shows, because there was a tweet or something that Tom put out or answered to, and I responded to it, and I realized a lot of the Marvel show, the Disney Plus shows, I only really liked a couple of them, like, and so I'm wondering if the Disney Plus shows, it's not for your hardcore fan and it's not hardcore storytelling. It's just turn off your brain and enjoy. Because my favorite was actually, I think, Tom's least favorite, which was What If. Let's talk about Disney Plus shows for a bit. I really enjoyed What If, which was a good sit down. This really doesn't matter anymore. You're just going to watch random characters and you're going to have fun. It's going to be like old school Simpsons, no serialized storytelling, just one-off episodes, even though they did kind of come all together at the end. But that was probably my favorite Disney Plus show, followed by WandaVision, again, because every episode was unique. And we did a show on WandaVision, and it was like, the different eras of TV and the long form storytelling. But even then, it was not serialized really at the beginning, except for a few seconds every episode. Loki, I thought, was pretty good. This is where we get into like, okay, well, now we're just dealing with variants, right? You got Loki and Lady Loki, and then you got Hawkeye and Kate Bishop Hawkeye, and then you got Falcon, who's now Captain America variant, and then Winter Soldier, and then of course Moon Knight, which is just like we talked about, brand new. I really, if I had to say like Disney shows you liked, I would just say What If and WandaVision, and then I would say Loki was pretty good. And again, Loki is kind of like Oscar Isaac. Like if it wasn't Tom Hiddleston, I don't know if Loki would have been as, and Owen Wilson, loved him in Loki. If it wasn't for those two guys, I don't know if I would have liked it as much.
Yeah, that's a really good rating. I really enjoyed What If. I think I agree with you. It's just entertaining. I could watch it, like I could even pause it and be like, I'll finish it later, and just enjoy them one off. And I think
there was one episode of Moon Knight. Yeah, it took me 3 times to finish it. I think it was episode 3. I had to start, stop.
Yeah, maybe fell asleep there, one of them.
Yeah.
But what I did like WandaVision and Loki, I think, are my 2 favorite. But what I noticed about both of those shows, it was definitely like, in my community and the culture, it was way more popular. I mean, maybe it was because it was, more middle of COVID, but people at work were talking about it. We were like talking about each episode. Like, what do you think? Like, I remember WandaVision, like a ton of us were talking like, what's happening? Like, there's so much mystery. Every episode you just would get a little bit more clue, because you really had no idea who was controlling this, who was making this happen. None of the characters really knew. And so even at church, right? Like being in ministry, like at lunch, we're all talking about WandaVision and what was happening. And then you talk about Moon Knight and people were like, what? What
yeah,
show?
I didn't really watch that
like
one.
2 people were watching it out of 10 or 12 people who were sitting around talking about it. And so
it's like everyone watched Friends and Seinfeld, but then there's only a few of us that watch Radio City, and it's like, oh, it's such a good show, but like, yeah, what is that show? I don't know. It's opposite of Seinfeld. Yeah, I think that's what I have to do, and I'm already mentally preparing for that for Miss Marvel. I enjoyed. I'm in the minority of white men that enjoyed the Miss Marvel comic books. I got a #1 behind me that I'm keeping, #1 variant cover that I'm keeping for a long time. I really enjoyed Miss Marvel in the comics. I thought she was pretty good in the video game. But what they're doing in the TV show is just not the same Miss Marvel, and I think they're just doing it in the wrong way. And not, I don't know, but I'm already mentally preparing. Like, if I could say this show wasn't for me, out of any show, Miss Marvel's going to be it. I hope my daughter likes it. I hope it's good for her. I hope I don't feel like Eternals where I like, oh, I should have screened this first. But I hope Miss Marvel's going to be good, but I know Miss Marvel, I'm going to have to be like, just turn off your comic brain. It's not going to be like, I mean, they already said they're not going to do stretchy powers. Now it's going to be some kind of weird magic power. And that's part of some of her charm in the comics and in the video game is her stretchy power. I don't know, but so maybe that's just what it is. I'm just evolving into, let's just turn my brain off. I can turn it on for movies like Doctor Strange. You can nerd out. There are tons of Easter eggs in that. A lot of times last night I was doing the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the screen kind of thing. And like, I felt weird because I was like the only guy in the theater doing it. Oh, there's that. And I'm getting excited at all the wrong parts. I'm like, yes. And everyone's like, shut up, they're talking. Like, oh, like they're referencing something. Yeah, I just can't do that on the Disney Plus shows. Maybe the Disney Plus shows are made to be like the CBS of television. Like, it's just meant to just be overall watered down fluff TV, like Big Bang Theory or Young Sheldon or, stuff like that.
So a couple of thoughts. One,
2.5 Men. There's Chuck Lorre. Chuck Lorre is the guy I'm thinking of.
Oh, Chuck Lorre's the man.
Yeah.
A couple of thoughts. You talked about Miss Marvel maybe not being for you. I watched the trailer and my first thought was, man, this feels more like a teen dramedy with some superheroes thrown in versus a superhero show. But then I find out it will be the first Marvel Disney show that is PG or TV PG instead of TV 14 or whatever it is. So it's actually graded at a lower level than the other movies have been, which makes me think it is targeted at a slightly younger audience.
Yeah. And that's okay. And, some of the best shows we talk about are not superhero shows, but they're a different genre with superheroes, right? Like, Netflix shows are the best about. Daredevil's a lawyer procedural with a superhero. Jessica Jones was a survivor story with superheroes. Luke Cage was blaxploitation with superheroes. Loki was time travel show with superheroes. Maybe that's where Moon Knight is falling down, and even WandaVision was like an homage TV show that with superheroes. And maybe that's where Hawkeye kind of lists higher than Moon Knight and Falcon and Winter Soldier, because Winter Soldier was the best Captain America movie because it was a spy thriller with superheroes, but Falcon and Winter Soldier didn't really have any elements like that. Moon Knight, there's no genre for what Moon Knight is. And even Hawkeye could be a Christmas show with superheroes. But so I think that's what it needs to be. So, hey, if this is as long as it's not like Riverdale or any other CW show.
Yes.
But if it's like a fun teeny pop show, what's that? There's a show my daughter loves. It wouldn't be the same genre, but it's like the Robinsons or something like that. It's about a superhero family. She loves that show.
Oh yeah.
If it's something like that, hey, that's cool. I'd really like them taking those genres and just spinning it. Ant-Man was a heist movie with superheroes. Which thankfully more people are accepting of Ant-Man. When it first came out, was not well received.
I love
more
Ant-Man.
people, I think,
especially
after Ant-Man 2. Which, by the way, you want to talk about non-motivated evil white villains? Ant-Man's Darren Cross Yellow Jacket takes the cake on that. Just let's just be evil for evil's sake. Like, what a terrible villain, and what a waste.
I'm gonna turn on a dime.
Was.
I supported this company for years. I supported your family for years. Now I want you all dead.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean that's the king of non-motivated characters, villains. But anyways, all that to say, Moon Knight, maybe that's what it's missing. It should have been an archaeological adventure, and it just missed that mark. It wasn't Indiana Jones with superheroes. It wasn't the Mummy. I mean, even the original Mummy, I love the original Mummy with superheroes. That would have been cool. Although I guess technically that would have just been the Mummy. Right. Nothing could kill Brendan Fraser in that movie. It was, maybe that's where it missed the mark. It should have been something fun like that. And instead it was just exposition, the movie featuring Moon Knight.
Yeah, there wasn't action until the third episode. And then it was only, 5 minutes until you get to the last episode when it's 15 minutes. And I think I agree with that. I think I struggle to understand, like, so my wife, she watches almost all the shows with me. Moon Knight, she saw a trailer. She's like, I don't know, it seems pretty dark. She's a therapist, and she's like, I don't find much entertainment in talking about, people's mental disorders. And so I watched a couple. She's, what is it like? And I'm like, she's like, is it an action? I was like, well, not yet. I think it will be, because he's a superhero and he fights people. And I had a tough time describing, what it's like to somebody else who hadn't seen it.
Okay, this is the mark I think it should have hit. It should have been more of a psychological thriller.
Yes,
superheroes, maybe something along the lines of there was a motel movie, remember, with the 13 people, and there was a mystery, like they kept disappearing one by one, and then there was like a twist in the middle. They all had the same birthday. I won't give away the ending, but it was kind of like it needed to be that thriller a little bit more, and they got some of that with the mental hospital scenes. I think we got that with the cliffhanger. We got that in that show, but then there wasn't much to it. Episode 5 was essentially like a drama. Not much going on there. Drama in the sand. So yeah. So I mean, Moon Knight, scale of 1 to 10. What do you think, Ricky?
I probably give it a 7. I didn't dislike it. I enjoyed it, but it definitely isn't the top of my list.
Yeah, on a scale of Eternals to Endgame, man, I'd give it a Thor 1. Not quite as bad as Thor 2, but yeah, I'm not gonna watch it again. What about you, Garrett?
Yeah, I think a 7. Like you said, watch it again. I really enjoyed it. I like watching the show. It was fun to carve out time, but I doubt that I'll be sitting around talking about it with anyone, at work about what they thought.
Now my scale is different, because I would watch a 7 again. Like I'd give Ant-Man a 7. I'd watch that again. I think anything less than a 5, I wouldn't watch again. And of course, Eternals, that's just like I talked about. Like, that's just going to be the collector in me, putting it on the shelf, never taking it out of the shrink wrap, and just never touching it.
So you bring up an interesting idea there. You mentioned bringing it back to comic books. Do you think we're getting to the point where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is so broad that it's more like the Marvel comic books, where I have the ones I like, you have the ones you like, sometimes we like the same ones, sometimes we don't, and all of that is okay at the comic shop?
Yes, I think it's getting there. I think that might be where they want it to be. Because I mean, if you want to go like really niche down, I mean, they could do like what we talked about this with Star Wars. Like, I want to see a Star Wars TV show with non-force wielding characters. I want to see like the day in the life of a bounty hunter, the day in the life of a cantina runner, the day in the life of a droid mechanic. Like, I want to see those stories.
Cheers on Tatooine.
I want to see the day in the life of an Ewok, right? Give me an Ewok 15-minute webisode or something. But do we still have, we don't have webisodes anymore, right? They just make the show. I want to see something like that. And so I think eventually we could get to that point. The problem is the creative is such an endeavor. It's not like hiring. I mean, like some of these comics that come out, you can tell, this is a bad example, but like Punisher kills the MCU, right? Like, they're going to put a junior penciler and a junior colorist on, and maybe not that, but like Rocket Raccoon is a great example. Like that comic, when it came out a few years ago, nobody liked it, but they wanted to tell that story. They wanted to try that version of art, and it ended up having a good story, but I couldn't get past the art. I did not like that artist style. And so like I think it's easier to do it on pencil and paper and ship that than to put all this money that you have to have a return in, because there's nothing else to subsidize it if they mess it up. And I would love it to be that way, where it's like, what are you watching, wife? And she's like, oh, I'm watching Downton Abbey, but Marvel, you know, like what is that? Like Black Knight's family, the original Black Knight, right? Downton Abbey Black Knight edition, something like that would be super cool. And you know, my daughter's watching, I guess, you know, they kind of have that for kids, right? There's like 2 Spider-Man shows. One of them's for preschoolers, and another one, you know, then they got the not adult anime, but like the teenage Disney XD Spider-Man with Miles Morales. They're kind of doing that. And then they had an Avengers cartoon where they're all like pop figures, but they're cartoons. And I remember that an episode with Silver Surfer and Thanos that was like really funny. So maybe we just need more of that. I don't know how Disney and Marvel can do it under one studio, because they contract out those cartoons to other studios.
Right.
But there's no one else that's really in charge of MCU. It's not like Disney and Pixar. Disney makes some animations, Pixar makes some animations. Maybe that's what they'll have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Disney Plus to be viable long term and have the amount of content that they need to create for it to be something that people want to continue to pay indefinitely, these Marvel shows, like you said, they're just going to be, you know, watching the courtroom procedural show that takes place with superheroes. And I think as fans, we want everything to fit, and it'll all fit in the MCU, especially now that you have multiverses and variants. But like, we all want it to like coincide with an end game every 6 years, you know, because that's fun. You know, I mean, that's fun to see that happen. We saw glimpses of that with the most recent Spider-Man, but I don't think, I mean, you know, Justin, I was curious about what you felt to like finish Moon Knight, then go watch Doctor Strange, both be in the MCU, have nothing to do with each other, I assume.
Yeah.
And be like, man, there's a lot of spinning plates in my mind that what the MCU is.
It's a lot like what my Sunday is going to be. I'm going to have a frozen sausage biscuit for breakfast, and then we're going to go to a nice steakhouse for lunch. It's like, you know, it's sustenance, it's entertainment. It gets you through the day, but there's going to be these large events, kind of like in the comics, right? Like, I mean, I only read Avenger comics. I didn't read Spider-Man comics. I certainly didn't read X-Men comics, not because I didn't like it. It's just because you only got so much money when you got a pull box. And so I told my guys, like, give me Avengers, give me Avengers variants, you know, Mighty Avengers, A-Team, Avengers World, and then give me Iron Man. Every once in a while, there was a different pull, like Deadpool was in my box. But, you know, then the massive events would come out, Secret Wars, what's this, Original Sin, stuff like that would come out. And it would be like, oh, I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, well, what's happening? Like Avengers versus X-Men. It's like, where did these young X-Men come from? And it's like, oh, well, there was a bunch of stuff that happened in X-Men that I didn't pay attention to. And you can just go back and read it on Marvel Unlimited. But it's like, you know, we could get to that point, and I think that would be a lot of fun. It's just culturally, it's, I don't know if people are there yet. Like, I still remember Winter Soldier, you know, Shield gets hacked and outed and all that, and people are saying, well, where was Iron Man? Like, he was doing his own movie. Like, he doesn't have to be in every movie, you know, or where was the Avengers for this? Why didn't they help? And it's like, comic book readers are used to this, right? Like, something happens in New York, well, where's the Daredevil? Why does Spider-Man have to handle it? It's because it's Spider-Man's story. Just get over it, you know?
Right.
Or for that year, Daredevil was in San Francisco. Why is he in San Francisco? Or worse, like when you have overlapping stories, like one new arc starts before another print ends. Like Superior Spider-Man started before, or no, it was, I can't remember. It had to do with Axis, where everyone flipped. And it's like Superior, yeah, that's what it was. Superior Iron Man was imprisoned by the Avengers because there was a 6 month jump. before Superior Iron Man run ended. And so if you're reading Superior Iron Man, he's like in San Francisco fighting against Daredevil because he's the bad guy. But then in Avengers, it's 6 months later and he's being imprisoned. And you're like, what happened? There was something in those 6 months, and they never tell you. They never tell you how the Avengers caught Superior Iron Man. You just have to accept they caught him and they put him in a prison. That's where the story needs to be. And like that, people would not settle for that. There would have to be something in the middle. Otherwise, fans would not be happy in the movie. It's just a different culture. I think we're used to it in comics. We're not used to it in movies and TV.
No, do they have to always explain it? Like I remember in Captain Marvel, she was like, "Why didn't you help? The world's ending." Like, well, there's other worlds other than just Earth. And it's like, well, I mean, Thanos is a pretty bad guy. I mean,
yeah. I mean, well, even the Eternals, right? Where you guys when Thanos came, why didn't you help? Like, they got to have that one liner because people are not going to let it go. You know?
Yeah.
They did something in Moon Knight too, didn't they? They said something about the gods. Where were the gods during Thanos? There was a line about that. Like they just have to. I mean, what are they going to have 20 years from now? There's going to be one episode on just, well, during Thanos, I was here. And during Secret Wars, I was here. And actually during the incursions, I was here. And it's like, okay, buddy, come on. Like, I don't know, just something's different about the TV and movie audience that they need to be spoon-fed that, and they can't just accept, oh, now so-and-so is this now, or like now there's a Gray Hulk and now there's a Professor Hulk and now there's I think that too, Amadeus Cho Hulk, what is it, Incredibly Awesome Hulk, like he started before Hawkeye shot and killed Bruce Banner, like they were going concurrently and like no one knew why. I think it was like years before we found out how Amadeus Cho became Incredibly Awesome Hulk, like the origin story. I think that's the story I'm thinking of, but you just accepted it because it was a fun story. And it's like, oh, what happens if another genius becomes Hulk? I thought that was, you just don't get that with movies and TV. Everything needs to be spoon fed.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Ricky, what are you nerding out about besides Moon Knight? Anything you're watching or playing or reading?
There honestly right now, Moon Knight. I am keeping tabs on Robotech News, but just because
is that a YouTube channel or
no. Literally checking the news.
Oh, okay. You're
Robotech.
Okay. Gotcha. You've got your pipe at the breakfast table. Robotech News.
There's a big rumor of a live action Robotech movie, and they just got a new director recently. So
okay.
I'm trying to kind of keep track of that. But other than that, just keeping up with the Marvel stuff right now.
Awesome. What about you, Garrett?
Yeah. So a little shout out to the Facebook group. A couple of weeks ago, I was like, hey, I want to start reading Lord of the Rings because the new Amazon show. And people are like, well, that's not even based on any
read the appendices.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I didn't know that. But I was asking, like, should I start with the Silmarillion? And I got mixed reviews, but I just didn't think I could commit to reading all those books and leave one out. So I'm trudging through the Silmarillion.
Are you reading that first?
Yep, reading it first.
Oh, wow.
It's about like it's
that's a dense read.
It's like going to the gym. I mean, like it's like
it's like starting with numbers.
Yes,
I'm gonna read the Bible in a year. I'm gonna start with numbers.
Yeah, I think I was listening to it. I think in the first hour there was like over 100 characters introduced, and like I was like, is a lot to keep track of. But I'm gonna get through it so I can officially read the entire. I've never read really any of the Lord of the Rings. I read some of the Hobbit when I was younger. The movies are really good, so it's gonna probably take me a long, because I do other readings too, but to finish all this series might take me a year or so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I watched Doctor Strange last night. I won't spoil it. We did open a Discord channel, so if you're not in our Discord, go to the Facebook group. Try to keep the spoilers there because you can't keep things spoiler free in Facebook. It's tough. But I did make a Discord, so go to our Facebook group. You can get the link to our Discord. I don't know how to make a permanent link in Discord, so I can't put it on the website. It expires in 7 days. I'm sure there's a way to do that. I just don't know how to do it. So I watched that last night. Really good. Really enjoyed it. And maybe it's because I went in with zero expectations. America Chavez, I actually hate that character. I thought it was incredibly just a poor character. I actually wrote Marvel and canceled my Marvel U subscription when it came out. Obviously, I renewed it like a couple years later after I forgot about it. But she and I went in with zero expectations, and it ended up being okay. I still don't care for her character, but you know, it's not as bad as it was in the comics. Let's see. I watched The Bubble on Netflix. It's a movie. It's about a bunch of spoiled actors trying to make a movie during the pandemic, and they're in a bubble, like, and so like they're all spoiled, and it's that whole like. It was entertaining. It's another dumb, just sit down with the bag of popcorn, bag of popcorn and a box of candy and just watch it. Not a family movie. I finished Ozark. Very good. Highly recommend Ozark. Now that it's finished, it's probably a better watch. And let's see. I finished Moon Knight. So, and I watched House of Gucci on the plane. I love those dynasty movies like Wolf of Wall Street and Boiler Room and just stories of like rich people meeting their demise. I thought it was fun, and it's a long movie. It took me 2 flights to finish, but I enjoyed that. That was a good, when you're in the plane, you watch weird movies like random, like, oh yeah, I saw that on the plane. Yeah, Bad Family. Yeah, I've never heard of it before, but it was all right. So anyways, yeah, I watched House of Gucci in the plane. But yeah, that was good. And I don't know what I'm going to watch next. I think I'm going to watch Flight Attendant on HBO. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I heard it's pretty good. I heard it's like a little bit more of a thriller thinker. It's not about a flight attendant really. So I think that's next on my list. Well, thank you guys for watching. Ricky, Garrett, thank you for being here. Hit subscribe and like wherever you are. And we'll try to do these every other week, but we'll at least do them with series finales and movie releases and stuff like that. I think we're going to go ahead and do another one next week, scheduling permitted, to talk about Doctor Strange, give everyone a week to watch it. And we'll do a Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, or as I type it out, Doctor Strange Mom. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Doctor Strange Mom. Thank you guys for watching. Now, don't make any promises to serve any Egyptian gods, and we'll see you next time.